Hello, everyone. It's Marie and Brittany, your hosts for the Property Management Show at Home Edition.
This podcast is brought to you by Fourandhalf, marketing agency for property managers. Today's guest, co-founder and CEO of Property Meld, Ray Hespen.
At this time, almost everyone is talking about COVID-19. So we invited Ray to the podcast to share with us not just what is currently happening with maintenance in light of COVID-19, but also to talk through what property managers should expect and prepare for once the pandemic is over. Ray, thank you so much for making time for us today to be on the podcast. We really appreciate it. So it's our first time having you. I'm shocked that it's the first time, but for our listeners, can you introduce yourself, like who you are and what you do?
So appreciate it so much for being on. I was telling you before the call, this was starting to get hurtful that we haven't got to talk on the podcast before. But anyways, appreciate you both having me on. It's a really exciting topic we're going to talk about today. So myself, I'm co-founder and CEO of a company called Property Meld. Our big thing is we're basically obsessed about property management maintenance. We do that in the form of providing a platform that automates a lot of the steps, the follow-up, the verification of completion, and just ensures the process through it. And basically what we do that is we work with property management firms, help tighten costs and increase efficiency and improve quality.
That's awesome. So obviously the reason we brought you in here today is to talk about maintenance, and more specifically, we're kind of in a weird situation right now where, we're kind of stuck at home and we're in the middle of a crisis. So, we first want to talk a little bit about how the crisis has affected, maintenance related to property management. And then later down the road during this episode, we'll start talking about okay, what's next? Like after the crisis, what does it look like? So to start off that conversation, can you give us like a big picture overview of what's happening right now in terms of maintenance?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we've been doing is been going through our data and just like seeing what the changes in behaviors have been right now. Obviously, there's a lot of renters concerned about submitting issues, having somebody come in their home, and there's a lot of people concerned about, do I send out technicians or vendors to complete issues or complete service issues? So right now we're seeing pretty big shifts off of what is the normal curve at this time of the year. And the high level view is we're seeing renters submit less and property management firms completing less as well. So it's creating this interesting storm that we're going to have to deal with at some point. But that's what we're seeing now.
Is there is it like a very, very large number less? Like, is there a percentage that you have?
So yeah, I'm glad you asked because I didn't know how far you wanted to geek out here.
I'm just so curious.
It's pretty significant. So really, so we call this, we've actually in Property Meld called this like the COVID effect of maintenance. So
it's the new Mandela effect.
TM. But basically what we're seeing is like when renters don't submit issues, that's what you're doing is creating like ghost service issues, right? It's like things that exist and they're broken, you just don't know about them. So we call those they're basically not submitted service issues. And especially as people being home more, like we expect equal, if not more repairs. So we're seeing a pretty significant drop off on the amount of service issues submitted to around the tune of around 25%, what is normal. And there's varying reasons for that. Some property management firms and even our early advisement on it was to prevent the renters, like if it's not an emergency, don't submit it. And that's been a message that a lot of property management firms have adhered to. But as more kind of information comes out on this, it's we're encouraging people to submit it and just prioritize.
Right, because it's like, what happens if you get, well, number one, if you don't have people submitting it, you're not going to know how to prepare for when you can go do it. And then the number two is obviously if you don't do it and you get all of these influx of maintenance requests after the fact, that's going to turn into like a crazy, well, yeah, you said it a second ago, storm, whatever you said. Sounds like it's just very overwhelming.
Well, and that's not all. That's like part of the concern. So if you're dropping like by 20+% of service
Right.
issues, that's already kind of like, ooh, like what's happening there. There's this compounding effect that's happening, which is basically property management firms are taking whatever submissions are coming in, and then they're prioritizing those. So the amount of service issues right now that are being completed is about 56% the normal completion rate, which is crazy. So half the work is getting done on what's coming in.
Man.
So you have these two contributing elements of what we call the backlog, and that is renters aren't submitting it, which they will submit it at some point.
Mm-hmm.
The cupboard didn't fix itself. The toilet
Right.
is still leaking. The fan is still making a buzzing noise. These are coming. It's just when people are comfortable with submitting these. And then on the other side, you have all this deferred maintenance that's basically piling up. And it's starting to get to pretty crazy numbers, to where if, let's say, social distancing starts to really ease off in May, you're going to have a backlog as big as what May produces all on its own. So, which is, I mean, everybody knows summertime is insane. So like, it's going to get pretty gnarly. It's how do we manage is the
Yeah. Well, and
That's
it's just
crazy.
like thinking about what you said a second ago too, renters not wanting to submit. I know Marie has a story, but like my
Yeah.
sister, her refrigerator broke and she's like, well, my refrigerator's broken. I feel like I need I need it.
Mhm.
So she submitted a request and she was just like all paranoid. She's like, oh my gosh, this guy's coming into my apartment. What do I do? Do I leave? And then she was just like, I sanitized everything afterwards. I'm like,
Yeah.
I think you're okay. And now you have food, which is good if you're going to be at
Mhm.
home for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it like really depends. So like actually submitted 2 maintenance issues for my apartment property manager. One was not really urgent. So it was raining very heavily for like 2 straight days here in the Bay
And you
Area.
wanted them to change the weather.
And yes, basically, right. And add COVID-19 to that request too. But really, so my window started leaking.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, it's not urgent, but I want to report it because I don't want to be like liable that I I let it go on for too long. So I wanted to put it on record, but I didn't want anyone to come and fix it. So I just
Mm-hmm.
like made sure I added a bunch of towels by the windowsill so that it wouldn't soak into the wood. And then I reported it and I made it very clear in capital letters, do not send anyone. Like I
Oh,
just
wow.
want the maintenance issue reported, and I told them what I was doing to prevent the water from soaking into the wood. And so I felt like I think I handled that like okay, so they're aware that as
Mm-hmm.
soon as like the shelter in place is lifted, this is like an issue that they can feel free to prioritize. But then 2 days later, our garbage disposal stopped working. And so it was trickier because we still didn't feel comfortable having someone come into our apartment. But at the same time, we were cooking more. And so we
Mm-hmm.
need the garbage disposal. And
Yep.
so we started Googling how to fix a garbage disposal. We felt like, hey, if something was just stuck, we could just get it out. Unfortunately, we couldn't get the thing out. And so this is embarrassing. We took out the
I know.
garbage disposal, put it in a garbage bag, put it outside our door, and asked our maintenance to remove the stuck plastic thing from outside our
Oh my
door.
goodness.
And our maintenance person was like, are you out of your mind? You know you'll be liable for leaks. And we're like, we understand. We want to keep you and us safe. And so he was like, okay, I took it out. I'm leaving. So when he left, we took the garbage disposal and reattached it. We troubleshoot like 2 leaks and now it's working perfectly. But I was like so scared that we would like break it and we would end up with more damages. But just to show you how, like, if like I'm paranoid, so I can imagine other people. I don't know. We were lucky that our maintenance person was willing to do that, but we're lucky that we didn't break it.
Well, and I think like the stories you just told,
Yeah.
anecdotally, all three of them, like this automatic pause that says, should I submit this or should I not?
Mhm.
Like that's what's happening, right? You're having these renters sit there and choose, do I want somebody in my home or not? And so there's been an interesting ways that people are handling it. One of the ways is actually to really communicate how they're going to protect the people when they submit it. So one of the cool things we built in Property Meld, our product team ripped it out really quickly, was allowing this like custom notification that popped up when a renter submitted an issues and like updated how they're handling repairs during this time, the preventative measure the maintenance people are going to come into, what they can expect when they interact, even in providing instructions like don't be in the home when we're doing the repair, and we will wipe down stuff. So, but that sort of hesitancy is what's creating this invisible amount of service issues that is gonna amount to significant here when summertime hits.
I love that you came up with that feature for the tool, just because if you think about it, there is so much mystery about what happens, and that eliminates so much fear. Like even if you look at people that, I mean, we were just talking about this before we started, but like support local, like if we're talking about restaurants or grocery stores or any type of local business, breweries, if that floats your boat. I was noticing a lot of companies weren't sharing what they were doing. Like we have, like obviously they don't, I'm sure they have a tool like Property Meld for like other industries, obviously, but I wasn't seeing a lot of communication coming through social media and things like that. So I feel like that just put your clientele just like a step ahead of other people. It's like, that's really cool. I just really love that.
It's 100% the product team. The cool thing is like we just talk to a lot of our customers and saying, how are you handling it? And just communication during this time, and over communication and positive communication is the only thing that's going to allow you to manage it. The moment you step into negative or fearful or whatever, like you're gonna be out of control of the situation. You're not going to be able to get them to submit service issues when you want them to, even if they're going to be delayed.
Right.
And so, it's kudos to the product team and our customers that helped us navigate to get to that.
Yeah. Kudos
Yeah,
to
I
them.
like what you said. Now more than ever, communication is very important, right? Like you said, I think that's true. That the main reason I was concerned to submit maintenance issue, and it was very clear I don't want anyone entering my home, was because they were not really, like, my property manager wasn't communicating with me what the situation was, like how are they planning to make me feel safe, because even if we do leave and we're not home when the maintenance person comes in, how are we sure that nothing's contaminated, right? And so I feel like whatever tool you use, if you make it a point that you're communicating to your residents that you're taking this seriously, I think like that's key.
100%. And I think a super tactical thing that people need to learn how to do right now is getting people comfortable enough that they submit all their service issues. You want to be, as a property manager, in control. I talked to another property manager and he said, I want to be the person deciding what's critical and what's not. I don't want my renters to do that.
Right.
I don't want, so you had mentioned like the window leaking, right? That's a perfect example. It could cause real damage to the property, and that's an emergency in every other situation. Well, I didn't think it was an emergency, and therefore I'm not going to submit it. And then we've got, $5,000-$10,000 in property damage or something like that. And it's like, so just getting them all in is like super important. And that's what the communication is going to do, is allow people to feel comfortable that they should get submissions up.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, because I had submitted the window leaking thing, and I said, like, I don't want anyone entering. We didn't really get a response like, hey, actually, it's an emergency. Like, we need to get someone in. Like, or not even, oh, yeah, that's cool. It's not an emergency. Like, there was no validation.
Oh, there was no communication back?
No communication back. It was just the automated that, we received your request.
No one responded. at least you put the ball in their court, maybe
Yeah.
like a little bit more aggressively than other people might with your all caps, don't come in. But at least they have the opportunity to then say, actually, I know you don't want us to come in, but this is a big issue and we're going to need to fix it. And it's in your best interest because you don't want that to turn into mold or you don't want it to like do whatever.
Yeah.
So I think that even though yours was, you're like, I'm embarrassed, it was aggro. Think that you did the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And not only that, like there is the ability, so we're big advocates of troubleshooting issues digitally. And so that's kind of one of the nicer new benefits of some of the newer technology is being able to do that. And so you think about the garbage disposal, like you tried to do it yourself and pull up, but if they're able to call you or send YouTube links or whatever to help you getting that going to where you're not ripping it out and setting outside the front door. I appreciate you sharing that story. But again, it's all around communication and being like, feel comfortable doing it. Like, let's navigate this together as a property manager and a renter.
Yeah. And this part of the topic leads me to a different question. So we're talking about the renters being scared to have people enter their home. How do you feel like the maintenance technicians or the vendors like are feeling, and do you have any advice on how to just handle that situation? Because we read a lot of things online, and I know I keep going back to like restaurants or grocery stores because that's what is all over the news right now, not property management and maintenance. But you see people being like, man, I don't really want to go to work, but I have to. Have you seen any like really good ways of property managers handling that with their team or vendors?
So in both scenarios, both if you have internal technicians or vendors, they're folks who are only getting paid if they're on the clock. I think that's important to know because that changes a lot of the motivations. If you're somebody who gets paid whether you're there or not, I know what I would choose to do.
Absolutely.
So in those instances, and I've talked to other property management firms, and there's one gentleman who had made the comment that he says, I don't think that they're cautious enough. Like they're treating it like they want to treat it more serious. So they're putting things in place. It's the rubber gloves. It's, telling the renter how they should behave, keeping 6 feet, like that communication is really important. Wearing booties, wearing masks as well. And I've even heard of some property management firms doing goggles like you'd see in like chemistry.
Oh, wow.
So, but a lot of it is whether it's overkill or not, or underkill, it's showing that we're taking necessary precautions and it's not business as usual. And like, we're going to take steps for that.
Yeah.
So, so that's what we're seeing there. The vendor side is really interesting because as we see in like dropping off, internal technicians are getting favored very heavily on the work for obvious reasons. Property manager says, my employees, I want to try and take care of these folks. The vendor networks are really being put under duress right now. So they're, from my understanding, from what I'm hearing from property management firms, they're being super helpful. How can
it won't work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do I best facilitate this to make this work for everyone? So
good. That makes total sense. And I loved what you said about, it's like, if you work, you get paid. If you don't work, like it's a job. Like that's how it is. You just kind of have to make the best out of the situation and do what you can.
Yep.
Yeah, but I think the flip side of that coin is because they only get paid when they're actually working, there might be an incentive to try to push through even if maybe they have a slight cold because they think, oh, it's a slight cold, and the dangerous thing there is like kind of gauging yourself because we all know that some people who are healthy enough don't get serious symptoms. And you can be infectious even before you start getting the bad symptoms. So I think communication too with the vendors and the technicians that like, yes, we want to take care of you. We have all these equipment to protect you. But if you feel even slightly sick, like please, like we know that,
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I forgot to mention is a great point that's in line with that. They have stated both, there's property management firms that state both for vendors, their own technicians, and renters. If at any point you feel uncomfortable about the environment, the whatever, like you have the ability to exit. And that's not been normal, right? If you're a maintenance tech or a vendor, to have the call to raise the flag and be like, everybody's sniffling, coughing in this house. Like, I just don't want to be here. Like, it used to be just go and do the job.
Yeah.
But they're empowering to make decisions more based on their environment. But yeah, so.
Very good. So going, like, I don't know if it's a step back or a step forward. We were talking about all of these issues building up, these ghost requests, or I don't know if that's what you call them, ghost phantom tickets,
I name
whatever.
it something different every time. Anyways.
Yeah, I love
There's
it.
a COVID effect, that's standard, but yeah, it's like your hidden backlog.
Yes, exactly. So obviously one of the risks that we talked about that's associated with that is just handling the backlog of May's volume times 2 in May, almost. What are some other risks?
So one of the interesting ones that we're kind of curious how it's going to pan out is, like, we see the huge drop in service up volume completion by vendors. Like, and you have to imagine if you're a property management firm and like half your fees, half your revenue went away, like, what does that mean for you? How long can you survive? I don't try and make assumptions there, but I know it creates like some serious financial stress on these companies. So it'll be curious what the already strained vendor network looks like after this. Is it going to be even more limited than it was prior to this? The other thing is, like, we've even like done the math on some of this. If you're able to increase your output by like 20%, so like say June is your max month of service issues, like, even if you were able to go 20% above that in terms of your capacity to coordinate, schedule, your workforce can do it, it's going to take you still to October. If you were able to start in like end of May, it's going to take you to October to clean up everything that's beforehand. So, like, resident satisfaction, retention, owner retention is all invested on happy renters and renewing renters. It's going to get a lot more complicated. And so the notion is, whatever your line is of service issue generation, like, that you're normally completing, like, you want to try and lean more on the side of empowering your technicians, empowering your vendors, and trying to get more of it done, because that's the only way that it's not going to be a massive fallout. Because most states are already through this month of being in lockdown, and next month's a big question mark. The further that goes on, and the further you reduce the completion rate, it's just going to create a more massive backlog that's going to cause some pretty serious company harm if not addressed in piecemeal.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you mentioned resident satisfaction, because I know, I think you did a talk at the last PM Grow where you talked a lot about the data and how that related. I know you looped in reputation and how maintenance is such a big piece of that, and just by improving the time it takes to complete a maintenance request can have like ridiculous impacts on your online reputation. So it's like, we're in this weird spot with reputation because Google, Marie actually just did, she just did a blog on it. Google and Yelp have kind of said, hey, reviews, you can submit them, but they're not going to be posted right away, because everybody is like, well, allegedly, Google, for example, is manually auditing them to make sure that negative reviews related to COVID-19 won't have negative impacts on that person's reputation. And since you said this might go out till October, even if you increase it by 20%, it's like, I wonder if Google's going to be monitoring them for the foreseeable future. And
understanding that, this is unique to property management, this backlog that would cause strain in perhaps your reputation for both owners and renters all the way till maybe end of the year, whereas restaurants are the main lifeblood of like Yelp and then Google
Right.
My Business. They're like, well, as soon as they open again, people are like, great food, great service, right? So
It's different.
it's different. They might just like go back to normal. It's like, okay, now everyone can submit reviews. And then, you're a property management company just left to deal with the onslaught of the pent up
Right.
frustration.
The review might not say, oh, my window didn't get fixed because of COVID-19. In fact, it probably won't say that. It's going to be like, I submitted this maintenance request in April and it didn't get done till October. So
let's make an assumption and play this out. Do you guys would you guys gamble on Google changing the rules out till October? Or are they just going to let the negatives roll?
I think personally, I think once the shelter in place eases and businesses are starting to reopen, most of the businesses they look at are restaurants, right? So once people are starting to support local restaurants again, and they're getting traffic, they're just gonna like lift that moratorium and then start taking on reviews, right? They haven't said anything about what they're gonna do with the reviews they've collected up until they lift the moratorium, but I feel like they're just gonna like let the floodgates open.
Yeah.
But who knows?
Yeah.
Well, and I think that they'll audit the reviews that are coming in now and then let the floodgates open. And I could see it needing to be on the individuals at the company or the individuals that manage like the Google My Business profile to go in and flag those reviews. And guess what? I have a lot of clients already that ask me to flag reviews that aren't relevant on like a daily basis. So what's that going to look like if you're having to manually flag those reviews afterwards?
Well, and so I think we can all safely assume like we can't count on Google from protecting us on the negative online reviews like coming up. So it's just about, if we know that, or we are pretty confident that, like, we should err on that side, and how do we manage it? I think it once again comes back to communication. Like, hey, we're prioritizing service issues. We've got a massive backlog, and just updating them on whether it be a weekly basis.
Yes.
Like, here's the stuff in queue. And you know what? Like, I gave the example of this. I ordered a cabinet. I'm doing a kitchen remodel in my house. And they said, man, I'm really sorry to tell you this, but it's going to be like 9 to 12 weeks. Like, it's a cabinet. Like, it normally probably be 2-3 weeks. They said, because of the logistics network, but because my expectations were set and I understand the scenario that we're in, like, I'm not going to balk at it. But if I wasn't aware of a 9 to 12 week turnaround time, they said, all right, fantastic. You'll see it when you see it. When week 3 rolled around, I'd be probably like a little annoyed. I'd be calling, yeah, it's coming up. It's coming up. Just check the mail. And if it took 9 to 12 weeks, like, I would be irate. So this is like where the communication becomes super important. Having a great prioritization process to where you sit there and can take all those service issues and go, what's high, mid, low, and low service issues, and just start working through them systematically and keeping the people up to speed of where they're at. You're still a priority. We care about you. You can have people be empathetic for you, that you're trying to manage the mass of service issues that you've been trying to protect interaction from before. And I think most people will be
human, reasonable.
Yeah, reasonable about it. Thank you.
Yeah. So I feel like from that, the biggest things that I get for what people can do right, or property management companies can do right now, is empower the tenants to submit requests, empower the vendors, maintenance technicians, staff to fulfill what requests they can and just be safe about it, prioritize the service issues, and then just communicate to everybody. Like, this is what we're doing. This is what we've done. This is how we're handling things. And hopefully that can help you prepare a little bit better for what's next, which is what we're going to talk about next. And
can I add one more thing to that, Brittany?
Please.
Empathy. Like
Yes.
we need to, like when we communicate, have empathy. And like we're very much like, and just everyone is like, we're in a business, and there's renters and they have a contractual obligation. The way that you come out winning is being empathetic and transparent.
Mhm.
And not saying this is how it is because you're a renter and go pound sand, but sitting there saying, we understand this is how we're working through you. We do care about you, but empathy.
Yeah. Very good advice. Because you do see some crazy posts on social media
Uh-huh.
of both sides of the spectrum.
Oh my goodness, yeah. And we want to. This is an opportunity for our industry to really like up their game and separate ourselves from, those few off landlords that give property management and investor owners a bad name, and be like, hey,
Mhm.
this is why you trust somebody like us. This
Yeah.
is why
Mhm.
we're professionals. We know what we're doing, and we can manage it through this. So.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, um, speaking about like looking ahead, so how would the world look like, after this crisis is over? So you already kind of touched on it in terms of, okay, there's this like boiling pot that's building pressure that's possibly going to blow up once the shelter in place, orders ease up. But like, what other things do you think will change or will string along even when things go back to quote normal?
So I think there's going to be a massive shift towards technology. I think this has been a forcing function for a lot of folks.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, I'm going to make this change in 6 months. I'm going to make it in 12 months. There's a gentleman I was talking with out of Denver, and he said, my reinvention 5-year plan or whatever has turned into like a week, like or 5 year into like a week or 2 weeks. So he took all the improvements that he was like going to get to, and it's Tony Klein. I got to say his name. He's right, this really, really interesting concept around the business reinvention every so often. And it's basically going to compress. So I think prop tech, property technology, this ability to manage remotely, utilizing technology to tighten belts where you can right now is all going to be super important. And I think that's going to be the big shift. That's going to be lasting. It's not going to be
Right.
temporary. It'll be lasting beyond. And so, yeah, that's the big one I see happening.
And it's funny, people, I feel like it's gotten so much better, I would say, in the last few years, but there's always this underlying fear from smaller companies that technology will replace their job. But
Mm-hmm.
in this circumstance, it's really a great example of how it can just enhance what you do and
Mm-hmm.
make your life easier, make
Mm-hmm.
everybody's life easier. So I
Right.
feel like that's just a good example of kind of maybe that person, or maybe not somebody else, but maybe it is in somebody's long-term plan because they're convinced they don't have to do it right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it probably is in this scary situation for some. It's probably eliminating some of the fears associated with taking certain steps.
It's definitely a forcing function. I think no matter what, if you've got somebody you could walk across the hall with and
Mhm.
talk to and figure things out, like, and that disappears, like it's a forcing function. I would still say, I mean, just from the aspect of what can be done, I know property management firms are sitting there going like, we don't know what's going to happen here. So like, how do we protect our own business?
Mhm.
And that's going to be done with like understanding your levers.
Yeah.
Like, where can you lean up? Where can you not? And it's going to be that's going to be a big driving function beyond just the working remotely aspect.
Yeah.
Like, we all wish we had Zoom stock.
I
I
know.
know. Or the food delivery
Yeah.
stocks, maybe.
Yep. Yep.
But you only know in hindsight, right? So I really like that statement about understanding the levers that you have as a business owner, because it's so easy to sort of oversimplify that, like, oh, um it's just a matter of like me making sure that I have enough to like pay my payroll. And so, okay,
Mhm.
the government has a stimulus package, and that's like what everyone's been busy about lately. But I think to always keep in mind that there might be other levers. And so now that we're kind of in the topic of like money, which is a big like lifeline for a business, another fear that typically comes with adopting technology is that, oh, but it's expensive, right? And right, like in the normal time, it's already a concern that, oh, can I afford to like jump into that world of like adopting a new technology, and then the time and money that it takes to like not do the day-to-day job, but to learn it and set it up and everything. Much more now when a lot of businesses are scared because we don't know what's going to happen. And we don't know how long this will go on. And so we don't know how long each small business can survive. And so you're talking about, oh, now's the time when people are looking to technology, but like, how do you balance that with the fear that like, can I even sustain it as a business to keep both the technology and my people and my business?
Yeah, so that's a tough call that I don't want to be on the business side of it. But the reason anybody considers any technology should be to solve a problem. If you're coming in and getting technology that says it should make life easier, like does it provide the optionality of the business owner to say, hey, this gives me the opportunity to potentially, if this goes on for a long period of time, that I've got an ability to take a smaller workforce and still go out and do it. If your problem is, I don't know how we're going to handle this massive amount of service issues, you're going to use technology to help you solve that. So there always needs to be a purpose of technology that solves a problem. And especially right now, like as we're seeing, like the conversation is way more financial future proofing. It's saying, what levers do I have? I'm interested here. And so it's kind of, I'm not going to say it's like an insurance policy, but people are doing it, doing the math on the paper napkin that says, yeah, like this is a good, smart decision that'll help me preserve the company. A lot of the things that I think we had kind of like come up in April was like the big fear was like 30% of my rent not going to get paid.
Yeah.
And property management, I mean, people can adjust for ups and downs of sales and revenue by like 5% and be like, like we gotta do better, team. But the reality is most people don't have such a large savings account that they could absorb 30% of a revenue drop in 3 months. And so that's why a lot of people are making the decisions either on that or on increasing throughput of their team or what's coming ahead. And so it's definitely shifted from we want to provide quality service to what levers do I have financially.
Are more people coming to you guys right now to Property Meld for help? Like, have you guys seen an uptick?
So we had about 2 weeks, and you can probably guess which 2 weeks they were, to where it was dead.
Yeah.
It was quiet. And it was everybody hit the pause button. And so I think what we had to do was figure out how, as an industry, we had to kind of go through, like, what is it, our 5 stages of grief?
Right.
Whatever it is. Like, we eventually wound up at acceptance, and that was 2 weeks. And it's like, we got to figure out what to do. Like, it is what it is, and we got to figure out how to do it. So we had about 2 weeks where I jokingly said the industry was going, including us, like 5 stages of grief, like what's this going to do? What's this going to do? And went through that. But from there on out, what we've seen is a shift to fewer but larger operators has been our big move. And I think it is because of those levers, that we talked about earlier.
Yeah. We kind of saw something similar for us as a marketing company. I feel like the 2 weeks of radio silence is kind of like very similar. We're like,
right.
Oh, this is life now. This is our life. But then things drastically changed, and you have different people coming out of the woodwork being like, I think I need to do this right now to prepare myself for the future. So that's really interesting.
One of the things that we say as a company, and I think this is important, if you're anybody selling to anybody right now, it doesn't matter if you're a property manager selling to an owner, if you're somebody in Property Meld selling to a maintenance department or a property management firm, it's like being a problem solver.
Yeah.
right? We solve a variety of problems. Some of them are just more important right now. For a property manager, the navigating the legalities of a freeze on evictions is a new problem, right? How do you be the problem solver for your landlords and owners that maybe wasn't your foot forward last time? So I think anybody in business, we are problem solvers. And what problem does your client or prospect have? And how are you a solution to that problem? And that's what COVID has done, is it's moved the problems around. So we got to solve different problems.
Yeah, definitely solving various problems everywhere.
I think that's a very important thing to point out because, like you said, like empathy is very important right now, and that's kind of part of it. It's not enough to just communicate that yes, I understand. You have to show that you understand by actually sitting down and thinking about, okay, what are the top problems of people right now, and how can I solve it given the current restrictions, and how do I communicate that solution to them? I think it's very powerful.
Absolutely.
So, do you have any final insights for our audience, or if not, what is the biggest takeaway that you want our listeners to get from this episode?
The biggest ones: find a way to get the renters to submit service issues, come up with a systematic way of how to address and prioritize those issues in the coming months, and over communicate. That's the big stuff in maintenance. Know the work's coming, know people are going to get pushed out, and just communicate. And that if you do those three things right, you're gonna be sitting at the top of the food chain at the end of this.
That's
Awesome.
great. It's like a make or break time, really.
Oh,
Yeah.
Like the calm. It's like the calm before the storm, right?
Well,
Because
it
it's
is.
going down, but like you said, it's like ghost maintenance requests. Like you just don't feel them, but they're there.
And I think business owners love challenges, like property management firms love challenges. Like, hey, this is why we're here, and this is why more landlords are going to hire professional property managers. Like, this is our time to shine. So
Yeah, absolutely. So we have the during, which is radio silent ghost maintenance town. After, it's going to be like a thunder lightning storm. So do what Ray says, everybody. Prepare. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Now that we know that you want to hang out with us, we'll definitely invite you again if you're interested.
Thank you.
Well, to all of our listeners, yes.
Thank you, Brittany. Thanks, Marie. Appreciate you both. And I'm excited to keep the conversation going as we navigate through this.
Me too. Thank you so much for your help.